Hi everybody, it's Sam. I haven't made a video in the longest time. I've been trying to focus on my blog and actually writing stuff, and hopefully getting that to reach an audience. But I know, doing YouTube stuff is important too to connect with more people. So I'm going to focus on that too. For example, I did do a review of Tommy's book, Pieces of Me Still Awake. I had started a review and I'm going to do a more in-depth video review, just quickly talking about it, and then hopefully people will read my blog on it, which I'll post in the description. But today I want to talk about something else. And trigger warning is going to be talk of self-harm and describing self-harm thoughts and just thoughts of cutting and actual self-harm stuff. So I'm going to do my pause. Okay, that should be enough time. So, I've dealt with scratching for the longest time, and when I came here, nobody really knew how to handle it. They tried to do safety contracts and take away privileges and, have me in the observation room, and it just made me worse. It just made me more, power struggle with them, and I didn't think it was a big deal, and I was sent to the hospital a couple times, and it was just stupid. So, finally Jonathan Camp with the care plan, he met with me, and he's very good about this motivational interviewing, which is a way of connecting with people that's more about having a conversation than it is about, controlling or anything. And it's about, seeing things from the person's point of view of why they would do something. So he came in and he was like, I'm not going to tell you to stop scratching. I want you to tell me all about it. Tell me why do you scratch? And I'm going to listen. And he actually had me scratch his arm as hard as I scratch. And, he looked at my nails and he cut my nails really, close. And he, just totally listened. And he said, this is how it's going to go. We're going to do this harm reduction where, as you're learning coping skills, if you scratch with your nails that are going to be cut every week, and you can only scratch on your arms, and, it needs to be treated right away, and, he said, then that'll be like what's tolerated. But he said, in the meantime, it's not like we're just going to leave you like that. You need to meet with me, and we're going to talk about coping skills. And we're really, we really started not just saying, you need to just sit and relax and you'll be good. It was more about, we're going to sit and talk about, how you have trouble expressing emotions because you're afraid, of what happened with your parents and the emotional abuse and stuff like that. And, we started talking about it, and I started to learn, that it was okay to be upset in front of him and in front of staff, and, that they were there for me and they cared. And so in the very beginning, I was scratching all the time, but I was doing it within the care plan, but other staff thought this was crazy, and there was a lot of turmoil in the very beginning, but the care plan got settled. The other part of the care plan, though, is if I were to scratch with something outside my nails, then that means that it's more of a psychiatric issue of I knew the consequences, rationally, but my emotions got too much, and it just became too much, and that's why I did it, or, it was really a, statement that I needed, more care, that something was really going on. And so with that he would call the doctor. And when I had Dr. Gill, he was Mr. Let's hospitalize everybody. So I would always go to the hospital. I think it was a couple times. I went to the hospital for it, and it was really dumb. And yeah, so, that would happen. And then Fayez, we called her the last time I scratched with a comb, which was the beginning of March. I was worried about Jess's grandma had passed away, and there was just a lot going on, and I felt unworthy as a friend, and just all these feelings coming back. And so, I broke a comb and I scratched with the comb. Didn't bleed or anything. I never bleed with the cutting, with the scratching. But so because I scratched with the comb, they wanted to see me, and so that's how I had to go to the crisis center, which is the part of the hospitals. It's like psychiatric emergency. Before you go to the actual unit. Just to go in and be evaluated, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they were nice about it. I mean, this hospital is very nice, and the staff are very good. Even this one guy that was, like, totally zoned, I can't imagine him doing crisis work for, like, years, as he said. He just totally, but he tried and whatever, and, but I didn't get home till, like, midnight that night, and it was just crazy. And, the hospital was like, these places, these facilities do that. They send you out for something like this, and, just to cover their own butts, basically. But so, I didn't want to do that. So anyway, that's clear that, like, when I scratch with something else, the doctor is called, and then she decides about hospitalizing or whatever. And so then, but last week I was having a new thought of taking it to another level of actually cutting instead of scratching, and actually bleeding a little bit. Not like, majorly, but, a small cut, which I only usually scratch. And I had that thought because I had picked at something, like a pimple, and it was bleeding, and, the sensation was different, and it just made me think about, cutting on my arm. And it was just, I didn't feel like I wanted to do it. It just kind of came into my head. And I hadn't done it during all the time I thought about it. I think I thought about it like on a Saturday, and then I saw him on last Tuesday, and we talked about it. And, he's like, I'm not worried right now. It's just a thought that's just, beginning and everything else like that. And he said, you'll tell me if it gets worse. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, for now, just keep the consequences in mind of, like, what that would do if you really did, cut your arm badly, and, you probably wouldn't be in here anymore, and, everything else like that. So, we talked about it and everything else like that. But then, and I was doing really good. I had no thoughts of it. I was in the back of my mind, but I was like, I'm not going to do it, like, whatever. But then things kind of built up yesterday. My mom's still recovering from her surgery. She's pretty stressed out because she can only work a couple hours and not every day. And my dad decided to leave this job he's been working at for a few years. That's really his solid second job. And so that's stressful that he just went and did that. And I wasn't sure if it was, I don't know if it's drama within the workplace or drama within, my mom's had a testy relationship with his working there, and there have been big weird fights and whatever about it. So I don't know if that was it. And then my Nana, who I'm not really close to her, but I love her, and she's very old, and she's on my mom's side of the family, and was in the hospital for high fevers, and her hip is just whatever, just, bone touching bone. It's really bad, and she has all these issues, and they don't know why she's, having these high fevers. But of course my mom didn't know about it for like 3 days, because her family is very, also very drama. They hold grudges, they don't talk to you, they just decide to exclude, basically my mom from a lot of things. And I don't, it's been a thing all her life. And, she, to give her, compassion, she was abused by her father, my grandpa, and he was alcoholic, and, physical abuse with the belt, and emotional abuse and everything. So, I understand, how she has never really gotten through that and processed that and dealt with it, So anyway, there's all that stress I could hear in everyone's voice, and, I can hear that she's getting back into, taking things out on my sister, and just different stuff that I have definitely felt has been the emotional things that have made me shut down and made me feel like I can't express my emotions. And, it's just really been the part of my PTSD that's been the hardest to get over when there are similar situations that happen. and that triggers everything. So when I was sitting there listening to this and then thinking about visiting, because I wanted to go visit, we were going to visit before her, we were going to visit in May, and then we found out about her surgery. So we were going to push it back, and I was having feelings about back and forth about it. But once she had her surgery, she was in such a great mood for a while, and I think it was, the relief of having the surgery, the relief of, it being done. I think it was the drug she was taking for pain, probably, did something in her brain for a little while and, calmed things down, and now it's getting back into life, and she's getting back into her ways, and, everything's back, not to bad, but, basically back to where it is, so where, it's just not healthy for me to be witnessing that. And it's just, one person considers trauma, another person can consider, fine, especially with emotional stuff. I mean, my sister's lived there all her life, and she's gotten a lot of emotional, direct, insulting, just totally being yelled at day in and day out, abuse, and being treated very badly. But it hasn't stopped her from, doing the things she wants to do, and from, developing, or from being able to be social. She's just a very tough, thick-skinned person emotionally. She's a lot like my dad. My dad's gone through a lot, obviously, with my mom, and, domestic violence and everything else like that, and how he's been treated. But she's, they just basically they are able to process things, as Jonathan would say, they're able to process things very quickly, and it goes in, and they're able to say, okay, and it just doesn't stick in them, where with me, every little thing, sticks, and it just builds up, and, so any little argument, any little tension, any little thing where I feel like I've said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing, or, often at my parents when things are hard, I just feel like my even being there is like taking up space, and it's like, I'm blind and I can't do some of the things, like housework or whatever, independently, and I feel like I'm not, I would be helpful, except, there are some limitations, and try to get my sister to be helpful, and that's like, pushing a truck with your hands, that's not going to work, and, so it's just crazy, and that's the feelings that I was having when I was thinking about visiting again, because like I said, for the past weeks I've been saying, I really want to do it, I want to do it, I want to see my mom, and, seeing my mom in a good mood is awesome. She's a great person. She's a loving person, a nice person. But she just, when she gets in that other mood, it's just, with us, it's just a totally different person. And I'm sure she doesn't do it, maliciously. It's just her mental, it's her mental illness, just like I have mental illness. And, I, just so... now, I was thinking about it, I was like, I can't go do that, but then the other thing that was getting on my nerves was that Jonathan had talked to my dad a couple months ago to touch base with them. He wanted to talk. Even if I were to never visit them, he wanted to talk and see what was going on in the family, everything else like that. So he talked to them, and I guess he basically told them, and he said that to me in sessions, and I've argued with him, but haven't really felt it sink in of what he said until, just recently. He had told my dad that the situations that I had dealt with in the past that had been hard on me, and that had been, had really bothered me and, set me off, that I can handle them now, and that I'm so much healthier and everything else like that, and that I can handle what comes up. And, I think that's true for here. Living here, I think I've definitely learned how to handle things much, much better. If situations come up, I'm getting much better at talking to people instead of scratching. I'm getting much better at sticking in conversations that are hard instead of physically trying to run out of the office. I've gotten better at relationship, issues with Jonathan, particularly in therapy. If he says the wrong thing, or if we miss a meeting, it doesn't turn into 2 weeks of me not wanting to speak to him, and it's not this huge thing like it was, and so I've definitely calmed down, and, situations have gotten better for me, but at the same time, this is a very climate-controlled environment emotionally. It's, and it's meant to be a safe place for people with mental illness to live and to have as much support as possible. So when you get upset, especially on the level that I get upset, and even on the level that other residents get upset of, sometimes they're, it's whatever the person's baseline is. Someone being upset could be, physically in a fight or whatever, or yelling, or they'll understand like what is the person's like mental illness, and that doesn't mean they're not accountable. Of course they are, but that's the work, is trying to get these people to be accountable. But they understand what's going on. They understand that it's not entirely in someone's control, and they understand that someone needing to live here means that they need help, on these things. And so when something happens, they just help you and talk to you, and you get a PRN, and if you need to go to the hospital, they call the hospital, the psychiatrist, and it's just like, straightforward. And so situations that come up are handled fine here, with me and with the help of the staff. And if I were going home to like a really good friend, like anyone on the internet that I have friends with, or my friend Robert, I'm sure if he had a talk with Jonathan and got some more education on mental illness and got his questions answered, I'm sure he could provide a similar environment of understanding and compassion. And between that and between me doing, my work on things that I have learned how to cope with different things, to a point, I think I could be able to handle stuff. But at my parents' house, what they interpret me being able to handle stuff as is I won't be anxious, sitting there being visibly anxious for what reason they have no idea. I won't be, what their worst thing is me tearing up over any little thing, any wrong word, anything, any situation that if I just start tearing up, they just get so frustrated and yelling at me, and why are you doing this, and this makes no sense, and just putting me down for it so bad. So that, they're going to think that I don't do that anymore. They're going to think I'm not depressed. They're going to think I'm not, on edge and anxious, and, that all my things that bug the heck out of them, aren't going to be happening. And that's not true. That's, even if things were totally okay over there, just being in that, physically being in that environment and interacting with them would bring up, the triggers and being on edge and being, anxious and everything else like that. And then not to mention that things are going on, not to a level of like total crisis, but things are going on and things are changing. My dad and this job thing I'm not sure about, like I said, and, issues with my mom and her parents, and issues with my mom and her working, and just different stuff where it's like, okay, how is this really going to turn out? And if there's if things do get on a path of, I'm crying and they don't know why, and, whatever, just, things get built up, and, say if I were to scratch there, they don't really understand about the self-injury. I've done it, but they haven't really, I don't think have really understood what goes on it, and I don't think they would. One of the hard things too is that my dad had that talk with him, and Jonathan was explaining about the mental illness, and afterwards he said to me, well, I don't care what any of the doctors say, you don't have mental illness, which is just totally, that kind of defeats the purpose of whatever. So anyway, all of that was building up in my head, and I was thinking, I wish that I could be the person that my parents want. I wish that I could be the person of being able to go in there and handle things that go on, because like I said, other people could go in there and couldn't care less about, someone saying the wrong, talking in a tone, or, mom, reprimanding my sister or whatever, or my parents arguing. They could just be like, do, whatever. And my sister was, and, she kind of just, it affected her in some ways, but, she's got friends and she's got a life, and, doesn't seem to affect her as much, and so, part of me is judgmental of myself of like, why can't I just be like them? I want to be a person that can handle it and not be going through this and being so misunderstood, and so, that was on my mind today, and I just got up and I was fiddling with the metal ring on my water bottle, and, it has places in it where it was, loose and wearing down, and so it took me a long time, and I pulled the ring off, and just everything came together about, wanting to make small cuts and wanting to, just everything on it. And I just, got into this zone of, trying to do it. And for some reason I can't, and I guess it's a good thing, I could never, like I said, I could never cut. So I tried all kinds of ways to press really hard and to, pinch my skin, and like what they do for blood draw. Like obviously I'm not going to jam it into a vein, but try and get it to bleed. Like I said, it wouldn't, and I was just like, this is so frustrating. I was just really frustrated that I couldn't do it, and maybe that's the lesson, is that I can't really do it. So why should I be thinking about it? And so after a while, I just had really scratched up arms, similar to how it always has been, but no blood. And I found O'Mara, who was my PRC and who has been thoroughly trained on the care plan and on self-injury and everything else like that, because I didn't want to go to the nurse's station and have them just call a random PRC, because there are some PRCs that I can't stand and who would just be like, okay, so what happened and whatever, and they just be like totally distant. So I found O'Mara and she brought me upstairs, and I had to have the nurse look at it, and of course this nurse is like 70 years old, and though Jonathan and staff have tried to explain self-injury to them and the care plan and everything else like that, they continue to think that it's just for attention, or that they have no idea why I do it. And she says, what do you have to be stressed out about? And I was like, well, plenty, lady, plenty, and she was trying to say, you're not busy enough, and you're not. And I said, that does not going to matter. She says, you need to be out of the building. It's like, well, I could be in a total breakdown and be out of the building. Thank you very much. So, she was just going on, and I was getting kind of upset. And Annie, one of the PRCs that took over for O'Mara, was like, it's not worth arguing with Miss Earl. Just calm down. And so I did. I mean, most thing I was getting nervous about was having to go to the hospital, having to go to the crisis unit again, which I really didn't want to do. And, finally, the consequences were sinking in of like, oh my God, I did this. I'm probably going to be sent out. And I was just getting really anxious about it. And so, they called the medical doctor like they're supposed to, and the nursing office was told what was going on. And, I was sitting with Annie in her office, and we were talking, and we got talking about like toys and stuff. We were just passing the time, because I said, well, if I'm going to sit and be monitored, can I have my stuff? I had plugged in some of my stuff to charge up, because once I did it, it kind of sank in. I was like, I might have to actually be going to the hospital. So before I went and found someone, I plugged stuff in and put stuff aside, because I figured I might need it. And I said, can I get some of my stuff? And they said, well, we're going to wait. And so Jonathan got back to Annie and basically said, and this is the surprising part, he said, I hadn't talked to him, but he told her that, he had said that he was probably sure that I was worrying about going to the hospital. And Annie said, yeah. And he said, well, I'm going to give her a free pass on this. And that was his words. I'm going to give her a free pass on this once, and we're not going to call the doctor today. And I was like, huh? Because that's always, and sometimes Fayez is really not one to hospitalize unless it's necessary. And, sometimes it is necessary. But, she's not someone to be like, oh, this happened, hospital, like some of these other psychiatrists are. And pardon me, I've heard that it's for the money, they do it. But anyway, she's coming in Friday, and they're not going to they're going to let her know about it Friday, and, everything else like that. But he said, you don't need to worry, and I could just go back to my room, this room with Jess, and everything is okay for now. And it was like the biggest surprise to me. I was shocked. I was pleasantly surprised. I right away, though, was suspicious. I was like, what is going on? As with PTSD, you look for patterns. Hello? Yeah. I'll continue this. Yeah, come in.